it would benefit me in the long run to pay off my car payment, which is at a higher rate of interest than the savings account, or to just leave it put and let it accrue that interest.
Yeah. Do you have any, if you were to use that to pay down or pay off the car, would you have any emergency savings at that point?
I do have a savings account, yes, and the money in the savings account, the high yield savings account, is fluid, so I have access to it. But
yeah, how many months worth of your monthly expenses would you have in that savings account separate from the settlement?
Probably 2 months.
Okay, yeah, very good. And do you have enough in the settlement to go ahead and pay the car off, and that way you'd be able to recoup that monthly payment?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, if the interest on your car loan is higher than what you'd earn in savings, especially given that you're going to have to pay some tax on that interest, I think the better financial move is to pay off the car. Not only does it give you more just in terms of absolute savings and therefore a return, but it gets you closer to being out of debt, which I always love. You can think about it as the interest rate is really a guaranteed return that's equal to that loan's interest rate, which is, again, as you said, more than the savings. So bottom line, I'd say let's pay off the debt first, then rebuild your savings with what you were paying on the car every month. Hope that helps. Thanks for your call, Linda. We'll be right back with much more.
Faith and Finance is underwritten by certified Kingdom advisor Kevin Bruce with Align Investment Research, helping families across Collin County honor God by stewarding wealth with wisdom and purpose. Because true peace of mind comes from aligning wealth with God's design. Learn more at align7.com or call 972-972-8465. 972-972-8465. Align is a registered investment advisor.
Band-aid for infertility. Like it is a calling, and God can change the desire of your heart and make that so rewarding. It's the most beautiful, selfless thing. It's pure religion, but it's not a fix to I desire a biological child. God has to deal with that in your heart separately.
Hannah's Heart, encouraging couples through infertility and miscarriage. Saturdays, 4 a.m. Central on AFR or on the AFR app.
Faith and Finance is grateful for support from Sound Mind Investing. If you have money in an investment account, you know sometimes the stock market can seem like a roller coaster. But it's possible to enjoy both profit and peace of mind as a do-it-yourself investor, no matter what's happening in the market. A short video webinar about that is available at soundmindinvesting.org. Financial wisdom for living well. soundmindinvesting.org.
If you love what you hear on this program, there's even more waiting for you at faithfi.com. Explore podcasts, videos, articles, Bible studies, and devotionals, all designed to help you see God as your ultimate treasure and money as a tool to advance His kingdom. Pursue wisdom, practice generosity, and steward God's resources in a community with others who share your faith. Visit faithfi.com to take the next step in your faith and financial journey today. That's faithfi.com.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
Discover the story of the culture warrior, Don Wildman, and how he went head-to-head with Hollywood, Playboy, the homosexual agenda, and the Disney empire. The movement Don started paved the way for Christians to boldly stand for truth and righteousness in a hostile culture. Watch Culture Warrior today for free. Visit culturewarrior.movie.
Feeling burdened by credit card debt? As faithful stewards, we are called to manage our finances wisely. Christian credit counselors can help with a debt management program that allows you to pay off debt up to 80% faster, while honoring your commitments with integrity. Don't let debt hold you back from the life God has planned for you. Take the first step toward peace and financial freedom today.
Hi, I got a text promotions for monthly promotion that $4.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that just ended yesterday.
It says the Monday. I got a text.
Yeah, it ended already.
Ended it already? Oh my God.
We have another promotion where the first month is the same price as a single wash. If you want to try that out. for example, with the quick clean, instead of paying $18, the first one would only be $9.
No. That's fine, but that's what I told because it takes. He was saying it's ended on a Monday, so I had a plan for 40, for the graphic green.
Yeah, it already
Yeah.
ended.
Okay, so that's fine. Can I go?
Yeah. I'm gonna open the gate
Okay.
and I can let you out.
Go right ahead.
Hey, good morning. And I didn't know you were going to talk about Bitcoin right away, but you did. I've just been seeing videos about what the government might do as far as switching to Bitcoin and moving us off the dollar, those kind of messages. And do you know anything about that? And are they all scammy, or is this something we really should put some of our money in?
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I'll stop. I'm driving, and I'll hang up and listen more safe.
Absolutely, Kathy. Thanks for your call today. It's a great question. And what I would say is, there is a pretty big distinction between the cryptos, with Bitcoin being the 800-pound gorilla in this space, and I'll talk about why that is here in just a moment, and what is referred to as a central bank digital currency, or moving away from the dollar. I would say Bitcoin is here to stay, but the idea of a central bank digital currency, CBDC, is really not something that we're going to see, I don't think, anytime soon. And from my perspective, I wouldn't want to ever have that in the way it was described, where it would replace the dollar, and essentially every transaction would run through the Treasury, which would give the Treasury far too much control over just how we conduct ourselves in terms of buying and selling and exchanging goods. President Trump is adamantly against the CBDC. Most Republicans are as well. I know the state of Florida, for instance, Governor DeSantis has gotten out ahead of that, just to say, even if it were to be put in place, it does not comply with the Florida Universal Commercial Code. So, they're trying to put a stake in the ground that this is not going to happen. So, that is not something I think that would happen anytime soon. But in terms of the cryptos, Bitcoin is the oldest and most recognizable name in this space. Its market value makes up about 6% of the total crypto universe. So it is the kind of the big 800-pound gorilla here. It has a global fan base. It has institutional adoption. It has widespread regulatory approval. The other 40% of the crypto universe is really fragmented among thousands of other separate projects, many of which are competing with each other for prominence at some specific task or niche. And so I think it's important to understand, that those I would stay away from completely. And I think it's worth taking a second here to explain that while people often refer to cryptocurrencies, and Bitcoin really has attributes of a currency, but most other cryptos are not currency-like at all. Most crypto projects are actually a lot more like startup technology businesses. If you think startup tech business, when you hear about most other cryptos, that they become a lot easier to understand. But it's reasonable, I think, to argue that Bitcoin has arrived while everything else in the crypto space is still at the prove-it stage, where most of the projects aren't going to survive. And that's what makes, I think, Bitcoin and everything else apples and oranges. In terms of how investors are viewing Bitcoin these days, I would say, and I referred to this earlier, the easiest way to understand Bitcoin is to think of it as digital gold. For the first decade or so of Bitcoin's life, many users hoped it would become an independent currency that people could use to buy and sell outside the normal government money system. That view is mostly dead at this point. What's replaced it is the current view of most investors that Bitcoin, like gold, is a store of value that can protect a person's purchasing power against the constant debasement of government currencies. And I know it might sound crazy to call an asset that routinely drops in value by 75% a store of value, but Bitcoin has scarcity built into its DNA because there's this strict limit of 21 million Bitcoins that will ever be produced, and that scarcity gives it appeal to investors watching the continual debasement of what we call our fiat currency by not only the US, but global governments and central banks around the world. And so today's Bitcoin investors like it for a lot of the same reasons that older investors have always liked gold. It's a separate asset class that can resist debasement and hold its value while other forms of money, quote unquote, become less valuable over time. Now, clearly there's a generational tilt to this because, younger investors are more comfortable with digital assets. And what's interesting is that the correlation between Bitcoin and gold has dramatically increased over the past 3 years. And I think that confirms that it's shifting to a store of value use case instead of a replacement for the dollar, as well as suggesting that institutional investors are becoming bigger players in the Bitcoin space. So how do you think about it in terms of your portfolio? Well, I think, you ought to put it in your most speculative category. So if you believe in the case for gold, and we do, then I think it's worth considering perhaps a percentage of your gold exposure might be allocated to Bitcoin. So I would think in terms of maybe a max 10% allocation to gold, and then you take a portion of that and pivot to Bitcoin. If you're a sophisticated investor and maybe you have a full 10% allocated to a more speculative type investment, I'd say this could fit into that category. But for me, just because of the volatility and just some of the other attributes of Bitcoin, I would avoid certainly going beyond that 10% most speculative allocation. In terms of how to buy it, I would use the ETFs. As I mentioned, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission has, approved several ETFs for Bitcoin. So it's a way that you can buy into Bitcoin and have the ETF move in lockstep with the underlying price of Bitcoin, but without you having to have, the digital wallet and actually take, possession of the digital Bitcoin itself. So I would look at those approved Bitcoin ETFs if you're wanting, begin taking an allocation there. I think that would